these and more, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. This week's edition is a little special because Lei just got back from LA and I'm still in LA. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. If you enjoy this room, please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, good evening, no, good morning. And, saw you, 12 hours ago. So it was a good week for us, I think. So please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. It's just past 12 p.m. here on the East Coast. I just got back from LA, literally stepped into the door 30 minutes ago. And this is your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 92. Before we get into the LA, Bay Area, San Francisco, back to LA trip, this is a special day. It's the 28th birthday of BYD. And a few days ago, they just produced their 3 millionth NEV, passenger vehicle NEV, a major milestone. So a big shout out to BYD.
Yes, happy birthday and congratulations, gongxi.
For anyone that's doing math, it's 107,000 per year in the past 28 years to get to 3 million units on average.
Which, of course, is not the reality, but...
Right. And the significant thing is they got to 2 million in probably close to 27 years. And they got to the 3rd million in a year or so, pretty much?
Since we're talking about a Chinese company in China, we are calling this NEVs. So this includes their plug-in hybrids.
Plug-in hybrids. That's correct.
PHEVs. Okay. So don't give us crap for comparing any BEVs to BYD because we are including the NEVs since we're talking China.
So big congrats again. And back to our trip. I mean, how do you top the Detroit week that we had back in September? I guess you do it by going out west. So let me ask you, what were your highlights?
So let me qualify this because it was funny. We have a mutual friend that we have on WeChat. He asked us how LA Auto Show was, and I said it was Mama Hu Hu, which means horse, tiger. And in Chinese, it's kind of a slang term for just okay. And you got offended. And
I did.
rightfully so. But what I meant was not very exciting from a product standpoint. Now, Detroit wasn't very exciting either, with the exception of maybe that Mustang launch. But all of the other stuff going on really made up for it. And we can talk about that. And you've asked me now what my highlights were. I think randomly, watching Peter Rawlinson walk around the car of the year, the Genesis car of the year, I thought
G90.
That was, yes. I thought, because it's great to see that they also appreciate other products that, it could be potentially future competitors for them. I also think that bumping into Franz and Ralph Giles and having them talk to us and be so nice to us when they didn't know who we were. I think that was pretty cool.
And speaking of BYD, bumping into a BYD exterior designer.
That was so random. So about, let's say 3/4 of a mile away from the LA Convention Center, BYD has their offices. It says BYD Motors. I believe it's a retail location, but also their offices. And he was really surprised that we knew as much as we did. I think most people, when they initially meet us, are very, very surprised about how knowledgeable we are and how wonky and nerdy we are, I think. And you saw a few people and introduced me to them. I think that was pretty cool. The Volkswagen Group head of design.
Klaus.
Yeah. So it's just a lot of, I think the Rams game was really fun. If we're just talking about the week, I do also think that the San Francisco portion of our trip was,
Yeah.
I don't think we can separate this week into just auto show. Okay. So,
Right. So my answer, probably my top three. Number one is definitely the cruise experience in downtown.
See, I forgot about that because it was only 3 days ago, but it felt like a week ago.
Yeah. So that'll be my number one. Probably your number one as well. Because that's I don't know, it's not once in a lifetime, but it was right of your lifetime as you tweeted, right? And then number two is meeting Ganesh Iyer, CEO of NEO USA.
So I wasn't even thinking of that because I was just thinking LA. But
LA, right. And then number three, I would pull all of these chance meetings or not of these big shots in together as my number three is really meeting these people at the show, which, I was telling the driver that took me to the airport that a lot of these things that you took for granted. And that's part of the auto show, which I think is more valuable than just seeing the new products. Just face to face.
Because again, the product stuff was mama hoo hoo. Because the Prius was really good to see. I think that was really striking. The VinFast press conference, I think that was significant because they had launched 2 vehicles and announced that Goshen is investing in Vietnam and battery capacity in Vietnam. So China Battery Inc. is now not only in China, Europe, and the United States, but they will be in Vietnam as well.
Vietnam, yeah, that was what $275 million, 5 gigawatt hour, 30 million cell capacity LFP started production in about 2 years. So that's the gist of it.
And it really shoots Vietnam to the forefront of Southeast Asian electric vehicle manufacturing, which is important because Thailand is the big dog when it comes to ICE, Toyota. All the Japanese are in Thailand. So
yeah. And maybe number one, maybe you didn't get a chance, but I should add the Zeekr, Geely, Waymo, and Vision event thank you, Ash, for getting that details that I got to see at the very end. It was over. The event was over, but I got to see it and talk to some of the people there. And then also the emotional robotaxi. So these are the Cruise, Waymo, Motional, I guess, are probably the 3 prominent ones in the robotaxi space that we got to see and experience, right? If you pull that together in number one. Do you want to talk maybe Cruise in a little bit more detail? What'd you think?
So, I hesitated to write about it in the newsletter because I wanted to take a few moments to think through. Right. And so the Chinese autonomous vehicles that I've ridden in all had a safety driver. So let me just say that. I didn't get the chance. I've been invited to do these non-safety driver autonomous vehicle rides in China, but for whatever reason, because of COVID primarily, I've not been able to actually go and do it. So be able to do it in the United States, and you and I were joking about this, I am probably one or a handful of other people in this world that have now been able to do both in the last few months. And I have to say, my last ride was in Baidu's, and I had gotten an opportunity to ride in Baidu's Apollo robotaxi twice over a 6-month period, I think. And the improvement between ride number 1 and ride number 2 for Apollo was significant. And the herky-jerkiness that I felt in the first ride was taken away and normalized. And you kept on saying when we're in the Cruise robotaxi, this feels like a person driving. And I feel that Baidu had incorporated that into the newest iteration of the software and hardware stack. And I felt comfortable. I felt safe in both vehicles. Now, Cruise at night is a little bit easier, but we saw naked lefts. We saw a lot of instances where it was pretty careful. Even on red, it wouldn't turn right. So seeing no driver in the front seat took it to that next level for me. Okay.
Yeah.
And the next morning, we saw Kyle Vaught said that they're starting to do daytime. So now that's a game changer for me, because when I was doing it with Baidu and WeRide, it was during the day, and it's geofenced, right?
Albeit with the safety driver.
Yeah, it's geofenced, but it's still taking us point to point where we're asking within an ODD, right? So very impressive on both sides. If I had to lean one way or the other, I'd say probably Cruise is a little more polished. But I'll try to write a bit more detail in next week's newsletter, and then you and I can maybe follow up and talk in a little bit more detail. But what were your initial thoughts? Because for you, it was a unique experience for you, right? So
it was unique and not unique at the same time, in the sense that for us, having been following the industry, the EVs and the AVs, and seeing people post on social of their experiences with Cruise. So coming into it, we had certain expectations, which really improved how you begin to trust the vehicle, and that trust quickly kicked in. And after that, it was just you had an initial shot of adrenaline, but it subsided, and then we were just like, oh, this is, as I was saying, this is just feels like a normal person driving. And but yes, it wasn't perfect, and there were caveats. It runs from 10 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. in the morning. It has limited. It's geofenced.
I will say that. So for anyone who's familiar with San Francisco, we went from Japantown right off of Geary to Sunset on around 10th and Irving near Santong Chinese restaurant. And I chose those 2 points because I knew there was going to be a lot of turns and driving through the neighborhoods, because if we're driving on Geary, it's pretty straight. And so I purposely chose those 2 points. And again, not as heavily trafficked, but still pretty impressive. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then the hilly streets of San Francisco, a lot of traffic lights or stop signs, which meant on our flight back to LA, I watched the videos that I took, or, you took the same videos, and I noticed the speed never went above 25 miles per hour. So you do the same thing. So those are the kind of the ODDs that limits what the vehicles, like daytime, nighttime. But a lot of the left turns, it was smooth. Some of the stop signs, you saw nudging forward a little bit. You almost feel like, oh, you couldn't see, but normal human driver would do that, and it did that. There were corner cases, there were double parked cars, there were people running out, there were pedestrians crossing the street.
There's a person that was very close to a commercial vehicle, and I don't think they could tell what it was, and so it slowed down right around there. Right?
Yeah. So nudging to give way, these sort of things, it showed that it was pretty advanced. And one other important thing to point out is just the HMI, the voice prompt, the screens on your phone, and on the back seat, the seat backs. Those things are important as well, so that you know what to do.
And that's not to say that 25 top speed is not to say that it wasn't aggressively accelerating, because it was accelerating pretty normal for me.
Yeah.
So like a person would, like, it was not easing into accelerating after a full stop. It was going, and and 25 seems really low, but I didn't feel that we were driving very slow. Again, we were in neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
So
because of those traffic lights and stop signs, you couldn't have gone too much faster.
Right.
Because once you pick up speed, you have to stop because there's a next traffic light or a stop sign.
And situationally, Yizhuang, where Baidu is a little bit different. There are roundabouts, and it was The scenarios are a little bit different because Yizhuang also has like 4 or 5 lane roads.
Yeah.
Beijing right now, compared to 10 years ago, traffic wise and drivers following the rules is night and day. And what I mean by that is when I first moved to China 13 years ago, no one obeyed anything. And people would obey the red lights, but the sanlunchus, the bikes, they would cross. And the motorcycles, they would cross without any hesitation. So that has stopped happening as much in Beijing. And so we're moving towards a mature transportation system in Beijing. I think if you go to the lower tier cities, it's still kind of random and still pretty crazy. Guangzhou for WeRide, that was still a little bit crazy, but again, it was also kind of a predetermined route. And I'd love, and hopefully we'll be able to do that next time we're in China. Go test WeRide out again, go test Baidu out again, because the difference is not significant enough to where one is clearly the leader, in my opinion. So
yeah. And the other thing to point out is we had 2 trips. We made 2 trips.
Because we're nerds and we need to get back to the car.
We had to go back, right, where we began. So the first trip was in a car called Strawberry, and the return trip was in a car called Ant. And I thought Ant did a slightly better job because there were more left turns on the way back, I think.
Ant was a newer model too, because I think Strawberry was a little bit older.
And then cost-wise, I'll send you some screenshots of the cost. I think it was $25 round trip, so $13 to and $12 back, or the other way around, but $25, $26.
And this is for one way was about 18 to 20 minutes each way, and about three miles, I think, or something like that.
To stress, this was a paid driverless ride hailing, not a free test.
Yes, we were lucky enough to get access to the app.
We should mention that a good friend of ours helped with this experience, so we appreciate.
So if you're going to go to California and you want to try out the cruise, I would download the app right now, get on the wait list.
Yep.
And once you're approved, it looks like they're expanding the service. So maybe they'll pull more people off of the wait list. So
we lived in the future for, I don't know, an hour or so, 25 minutes.
We drove specifically from South Bay to San Francisco to do this ride, and it was not disappointing. So because we got it right away. We called it, and it was there right away. So we didn't have to wait. And then we took one back, and then we just drove right back down to South Bay. So
good thing we rented a Model 3.
Yes.
So Tesla helped too.
Yes. So, and I know there are people that were wondering if we can disclose anything about our meeting with Ganesh, but that was more or less a social meeting and completely off the record. So
Well, what we can say is he's almost a lifer at NIO. He's been with NIO for 7 years. So formerly with Tesla. I mean, he's on his resume. So
and he's fully committed to Li Bin's vision of NIO.
Yeah.
He spent 4.5 years at Tesla. So we also spoke about a little bit of his time there and what's happening with Elon. So he gave us his opinion about that too.
Yeah, for me, it was actually my second time visiting. The first time was in January 2018. So it was good to be back, and totally different NIO now than, right, January 20.
I'm thinking within 5 years, that small little office they'll be moved out of that office and into somewhere else, I think.
And then there was a ES8 park in the back and a ES6. This we can say. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, both of them had M plates or manufacturer plates, so they weren't really road legal. They're legal as engineering vehicles, but not as private passenger vehicles. So no one's driving an ES8 as their daily driver to and from work as a customer yet. So
Yeah, and this we said this before on the show, and we're gonna say it again. So there's already Neo Berlin happened. Next, sometimes in the future, I would expect a Neo San Francisco or something similar,
and then maybe a Neo Palo Alto. I would think
it's just a matter of time.
So that's where the money is concentrated, right? So
Yeah. And then I guess just the number of people that we met, planned and unplanned were
well, you got to meet a few of my old Manti friends, and I think that was a good dinner, good drinks.
Yeah. Beijing BAYJING friends.
One of those people is Ye Xin or Xin. He's a OG from the China tech industry, right?
Yeah, he probably knew everybody.
Yes, he knew Junpei from Septon, and so
next door neighbors.
Yes,
apparently
Shin is a good dude.
So and, small world.
Yeah. Oh man, just kind of recapping, and I'm still in LA, so the trip is not yet over for me. I may do Peterson's this afternoon.
Oh, definitely, you have to go because they have that Tesla exhibit on.
Yeah,
so
right.
you have to go.
And then tonight is the Fisker event. So I have the red eye flight. So
speaking, yes, this is a good point to mention. Speaking of Fisker, so yesterday was the SOP of the Fisker Ocean, and also the 1-year anniversary of my conversation with Henrik Fisker last year at the LA Auto Show,
which kicked off our Max series.
And so we congratulated BYD, we congratulate Fisker and Henrik also. Not easy these days to keep your promise that you made a year ago.
And this is a complete 180 for Henrik from his first startup, where he wanted to do everything himself. So congratulations to Henrik. I think we're going to have a hit on our hands with the Fisker Ocean unless there are any manufacturing and quality reliability issues, because I do think that Europe is ready for a completely ground up electric vehicle outside of Tesla as well. So
yeah, I think volume wise is going to be small. I think it's going to be in the hundreds for this year, and then slowly ramping up Q1, Q2, Q3 next year into the mid thousands, I guess.
Because we have to remember that Magna is also learning how to build EVs, right? So they're experts at building cars, mostly petrol cars, but this is a learning experience for Magna as well.
Yeah. So and I think next year their planned production is only over 40,000 units. So it's a very slow ramp up.
Right.
But nonetheless, SOP, so job one done.
I'm looking forward to the event tonight, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the event we went to last night. And well, I guess we mentioned it a little bit, but.
Well, before that, speaking of Henrik being our first Max episode, our latest, we should talk about it as well, Max episode that will be dropping in due course.
Let's say 2 weeks.
Is the Zach Anderson, the CTO of Clear Motion, which recently received a $39 million investment from Neo Capital. And there's going to be some big news coming out. So just wait for the pod.
Big enough to where he has to travel. So
yes.
Did we mention last week that we dropped the Henry Sanderson Max episode?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think that's really important because of all of the chess playing from the battery startups, or not startups, but the battery companies globally. And it dovetails into the S&P report last week that said due to geopolitics, due to supply of the rare earth metals, there should be some volatility in pricing and availability of batteries. And effectively, the U.S. legacies have completely and fully embraced the LFP chemistry now. And if you were a listener of the Steve Levine episodes for Max, you'd have known that already because we talked about that months ago. So it's a little bit of validation that, we had kind of talked through that. And S&P is also now pointing that out as a future risk for these EV companies.
Yeah, so back to the LA Auto Show a little bit. So I met some people, you met some people, and both of us met some people at the same time. so starting off with actually on the 16th, I was at the Porsche 911 Dakar event, and I met Oliver Blume for the first time since 2019. And
his first trip outside of Germany since China.
I have a scoop. He will be back in China for a week in the not too distant future. And I'd say he looked a little bit thin and tired. So it must have, being the CEO of the group and Porsche, I think it's not easy, right? And then there was a VW event, and I got to talk to Thomas Schaefer, the CEO of VW brand Global. He used to be the CEO of Skoda. And I was waiting to get a beer at the event, and he just standing next to me, and we started talking, and and then his eyes lit up, I think, when I talked like a lot of stuff on China, and then we kept talking. So
he's got a huge burden to bear for Volkswagen Group. So
yeah.
If he can turn them around, he's going to be likely the hero and likely someone who could succeed Oliver Blume. So
yeah, and then the event last night, we met with the France. His full name is Hohausen, von Hohausen. Is that correct?
Yes.
The chief designer for Tesla. I joke that's the closest we get to Elon Musk.
He couldn't have been nicer, by the way. He couldn't have been nicer. So
yeah, he was very nice when we talked about some China Tesla stuff.
And Alicia asked us who he was, and I was like, he's known for breaking windows. And he laughed about that.
That was so funny. Yeah. And then Ralph Giles, a legend, I think, in the design circles.
And, I didn't pull any punches. You know me, I don't really pull any punches. I told Ralph, I was like, hey, man, what are we going to do about those fake noises? He was like, we're working on it. He was like, give me some time, man. Don't bum rush me yet or whatever. So he knows, with that response. And he was very, very, I mean, we were joking. I said it jokingly, but, he took it the way I wanted him to. So that's good.
Yeah, 2 is referring to the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT concept, that the new EV with that fake sound. That's what 2 is referring to. So
it's part of the UX team. That's the sound thing. The sound for that vehicle is part of the UX team's responsibilities. That's what he said. So,
and then the BYD guy we mentioned, Greek American working in the US for a Chinese company. That's as global as you can get.
And he's an art center of Pasadena graduate.
Yeah.
So
And then at the show we met Klaus Kyocera, the head of design for Volkswagen Group, right next to the new Prius. So we had some fun discussions on the industry.
The 2 big groups that I think were significant for the press releases were the Genesis with Ed Lowe.
Yeah, you should mention that.
Handing the Motor Trend Car of the Year vehicle to the Genesis team. I think there was a huge crowd for that. And I think the Prius had a huge crowd, and the VinFast, I thought that was a pretty significant crowd.
VinFast, yeah. And then, as we mentioned earlier, toward the end of the day, we were walking out. There's Peter Rawlinson checking out the Genesis G90. And he was all smiles, like the way, we took a picture with him, and his smile is just so affectionate, right? If you look at the photo.
Just seems like a very, very happy person. So
yeah, it's got the, British humor type of feel.
And I should mention that there are four companies that Foxconn is going to be building for at Lordstown. One of them, Lordstown Motors, the other, Fisker, with the pair. Seer is the
Seer,
newest.
yes.
And the fourth is Indy EV. And Indy EV is an LA-based electric vehicle startup that is really leaning into the gaming, the augmented reality, and the virtual reality. So I got a chance to speak with the head of engineering and discuss this with him about how he's going to enter the market. And so I think Foxconn is going to have a really, really complicated factory at Lordstown.
And you haven't mentioned the Foxtron yet, right?
Yes.
Because that's not a US thing, but yeah.
So Luyan Motors, is it Luxon or Luyan?
Luxgen?
Yeah, Luxgen is a Taiwanese
Yulong,
yes.
Yulong Motors, yeah.
Yes, so they are a Taiwanese car manufacturer. Foxconn has partnered with them and created a brand called Foxtron. And there are a number of vehicles that they've unveiled under the Foxtron brand. There's a pickup. One of them is a pickup. And so, you see Magna, you see Foxconn. I believe Magna and Foxconn both want to move up the food chain. I truly believe that. And so they're learning as they go. And the chances of all four of those vehicle brands that Foxconn has at Lordstown succeeding is very, very small. And because it's just a capital thing. If they're not selling right off the bat, then the working capital is not going to be enough to maintain buying parts for production. Okay. And these companies, if they're not selling right away, they'll always need to raise capital. And you can't IPO right now. It's not a great market for IPOs for electric vehicles or any company from that standpoint. Yeah. And I think most investors have figured out that making electric vehicles is hard, it's expensive, and the return is not going to come back in a 5-6 year time frame. And so a lot of them have probably gotten burned by Tesla because of Tesla's share price not tanking, but
down big, over the last how many months.
Unfortunately, you cannot just say it's Tesla's business operations that have reduced the market cap because of what's going on with Elon and Twitter. So, man, rolling into 2023, it's going to be interesting times. I think money is going to be a little bit tighter. I think more announcements about Chinese companies entering Europe and potentially the United States. I would say before the end of summer, a Chinese company will have announced that one or two Chinese companies will have announced that they're entering the US. So
latest by 2024, I think.
Yeah.
If not next year. And then quickly on the product reveals, just a few North American debuts. So Hyundai Ioniq 6, the Kia EV6 GT, and the Fiat came out with this new 500e that's launching in 2024. Then the VinFast with the VF6 and 7 smaller SUVs. Other than that, the Prius, obviously.
They did also show the VF9.
Yeah, VF9.
Which is a $91,000 car.
Yeah.
And I thought they had pulled the battery leasing, but they have not, because the sales folks did say that that's an option. So I think you and I might have to go back to LA in the next couple of months and test drive these cars, Lay.
Well, we right next to the show, we test rode the Kia EV6, the Chevrolet Bolt EUV,
the Genesis
GV60, that was nice, and the VF8, right? Correct? The VinFast VF8.
Hyundai and Kia are just running on all cylinders, quote unquote. And I was able to meet a communications manager at Hyundai Group who was there specifically to promote Genesis. So we had some interesting conversations, or we had an interesting conversations as we were walking back and forth to the halls. And I plan to keep in touch with him.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll have updates on what's going on with Genesis, Hyundai, and Kia in the United States and in China. So
Yeah, and the last thing maybe you should mention a little bit about the coding the car, the documentary that Motor Trend showed, and they also came out with a book version of it. And the book
Yes.
version featured, guess who? Brian Gu of Xpeng. Well, I don't know. I wasn't, at the. I came in late for the documentary showing. It's on YouTube, so they didn't show anything on Xpeng, right? In the documentary.
No, it
No,
was
okay.
effectively all
But in
car
the
people.
book, there was Brian Gu was featured.
Yes.
Surprisingly, him being a finance guy, or so, but still, that's a great book and documentary.
If I'm being completely frank and objective, that documentary didn't teach me anything. But
because we've been talking about it all this time, right?
yeah, and it was really weird. So there was an NVIDIA person that they had interviewed. There was a Lucid person. There was
Qualcomm, BlackBerry.
Yes, BlackBerry person, but the rest of them were primarily legacy auto. And I don't really want to hear from those guys, right? Because
there was Lucid and Rivian guys.
Yeah,
featured,
but they're still car guys, right? Because to me, the real threat is with Amazon, with Google, and you're probably not going to get them on record to talk about that stuff. But why couldn't they also talk to an Uber person, right? Because they talked about software, they talked about data, they talked about privacy, they talked about, transportation. And so I watched the documentary, raced to VinFast, saw you, raced back to the documentary, hoping that I could speak with Ed Lowe because I wanted to tell him about our podcast. And nice enough guy, talked to him. He was like, there's like 5 other people in this little small auditorium left over from the end of the documentary in a little chat. And so, we started talking, and he everyone does, not just him, but everyone kind of looks at me a little cynically like, oh yeah, I understand Chinese cars or Chinese EV sector. And then obviously we started talking, and he started asking me questions. So that's the kind of sign of like, okay.
It was like meeting Sandy Monroe, right?
Yeah. And so, and yeah, he asked the right questions, but I feel that documentary is 3 to 5 years too late. And you heard people in the theater or like, it seemed like eye-opening to them. And that was concerning to me. I mean, we're at an auto show, so it's all car people.
Yeah.
But, the alarm bells should be off already at these companies that they work at. Okay. Yeah. And so I think you and I have a lot of work to do in the West to really still talk through a lot of this stuff with them, right?
Well, this is our aim of this pod, right? Just keep on educating and informing. And
yeah, because I liked the documentary. I think it was a hopeful documentary as opposed to an objective documentary that kind of looked at all sides. And so I do recommend watching it, because hearing the Honda guy, the GM guy kind of talk through their logic on a lot of this stuff. If you follow tech, it's nothing new.
Yeah.
The one thing that was a bit concerning about these guys, and it was mostly guys and a couple of women, is that most of them were lifers, with the exception of the Lucid guy and the Rivian guy, who are obviously, working at startups. They're lifers at these companies, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So I don't know how much disruption they're going to be actually doing at the legacy companies that they work at, which is concerning. Because at this point in time, and this is Volkswagen too, right? This is the case in point. You need more tech people in leadership roles, not in technical roles, in leadership roles. Think Doug Field, okay? He spent years out in Silicon Valley. He gets it.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of, visiting Apple and that plug and play event, talking to the NVIDIA guy. The dynamic, the feel is just totally different, right?
It was important that we talked to the NVIDIA guy being a technical guy, not a business guy. And, I value these conversations because it really adds to our knowledge base.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say too much about what specifically we talked about, but, he effectively told us that the whole team had to work overtime to get that China only server into fabrication.
Yeah.
And he questioned whether the automotive sector could do something like that, or had a willingness to do something like that, where it's like, you know what? Because NVIDIA was potentially going to lose millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of revenue if they hadn't done that. But they just go and get it done. And so, and NVIDIA and Qualcomm seem to be way out in front when it comes to the AI chips too. Yeah. So great conversations this week. Great new friends we've met for you, for me.
Yeah. And just, reconnecting, seeing some of the people that I've seen before again, and some of them that we've been seeing online, but now literally seeing the person, Peter Rawlinson, for example, right? That was cool. I think that's, we can't be exhaustive because there were a lot more that we can share, but, because of time.
Yeah.
I think it was, I don't know. Do you think it topped the Detroit trip? Close.
I think it's different. I just think it's different. It's different. For me, it was like my kind of welcome back to the U.S. kind of.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean,
and kind of comparing Oh, who else did we bump into at lunch yesterday? What's his name? Dan. Tell him about Dan.
Oh yeah, the head of the design at Japantown Motor, formerly now. So forgot to mention. Yeah.
Unless you have anything else, I'll just bring up a couple of things and then we'll open the room up.
No, I don't have anything else.
I think it's important to note that Mercedes, with the EQS in China and the EQC,
the EQE and the EQS. Yeah.
Yes. So the EQS is the electric S class. The top edition, I think it was 1.1 million.
It was an AMG version of it.
Yeah. They reduced it by $33,000 a few days ago.
Yeah.
So there's
a Tesla.
Yeah, there are basically no demand for it, and we're talking the one with the coast to coast screen. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the challenge that the ABB, the traditional legacies, are going to be under in China, and if their flagships are not resonating with the market, oh my goodness, it is going to trickle down to their other products.
Yes.
Okay, because that's why it's a flagship, because it represents the best of the brand. Okay, and if they're not buying the best of the brand, the richest people or the most influential and affluent, then that's going to spell trouble for the rest of the brand, the products.
Yeah, S class China is the biggest market for the S class, the ICE version.
Yeah.
Can the same thing happen in the EQ version? That's a question mark, right?
Well, the EQ was also reduced, I think, by $7,000 or $6,000. So not insignificant.
Yeah. Huge.
But I don't know how much that has to do with Tesla's price reduction. I think that was more of an overdue thing.
Yeah,
okay?
But Mercedes also offering compensation for existing customers.
Yes, to make them whole.
Through some kind of rebates or something, so.
In order to keep the customers that spent the extra $33,000 happy, or at least not too upset, they were offering alternate compensation, or not reimbursement, but some alternate compensation for that. I think that's important to note. TSMC is rumored to be building a second factory in Arizona. This one to fabricate sub 3 nanometer transistor ASICs. So TSMC is really, really trying to mitigate some risk here. And I tweeted onshoring from Taiwan. So that was a huge win for Arizona, because in total, they're going to be investing $24 billion over the next few years. So kudos to them.
Yeah, this week, I mean, there were a lot of things going on in China, but we kind of step away a little bit from that action.
And Mary said that they'd be profitable by 2025, that GM would be profitable. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to work if battery pricing is volatile, but
it can always change.
Yeah.
You can always, say, oh, because of this and that, we're not going to achieve it. So
yeah. So Thanks for joining, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
And likewise, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.